Hello, everyone. Welcome to Adobe Live. Happy Monday and happy International Women's Day, everyone. We have a jam-packed week and a jam-packed day. My name is Julie Sandusky, and I will be your host with the lovely Joanna Ngai over here. We'll get into intros in a second. But first, let's go over the schedule that we have for today. So we've got a jam-packed day. It is 12 p.m. Pacific time. So we're going to be kicking off today with some mobile app design, which we'll go through shortly. Earlier, we had Daily Creative Challenge happening with Voodoo Val. We had a drawing and painting stream, Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge. And then later today, after this stream, we have the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. We are on week 2 of the Daily Creative Challenge, so go ahead and check out those videos. The challenge for today for XD is to create a drop-down menu for a web-based platform using nested components. Super exciting. So yeah, we'll go see the chat, see who is here. Let us know where you're from, where you're tuning in from. Is this your first Adobe Live? We got Uriel from Texas. We have Silene Miroslav from Serbia. We have Joanna in the house, of course, with us here. We've got Voodoo Val as well. So hello, everyone. So reminder, if you're on YouTube right now, head on over to behance.net/live to join us there. That is the place for you to engage with us on the chat. And I'm sure you have tons of questions for Joanna as we go. So before we get started, let's have a little bit of an intro. Joanna, tell us a little bit about yourself and help the chat get to know you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Joanna. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm so excited to be here and just want to give a huge shout out to Adobe. Thank you so much for having me and for this opportunity. So today I'm going to be going through the design process for a crowdsourcing sustainability app called Trashtag, and it's all going to be using Adobe XD. But then before we get started, I also want to share more about myself, my design process, and what I've been up to. So I think you can see my screen now, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So a little bit more about me. I am a UX designer at Microsoft. I am working in the office of the CTO, where I'm responsible for data marketplace dynamics. And what that means is that my team is experimenting with ways to give people more control and more ownership over their data, especially in the digital economy. And if you want to learn more about that, feel free to go over to my LinkedIn. I work on something called Project Shrove. And outside of work, I also really enjoy illustration, and I'll be sharing more of my work in illustration later on. If you'd like, you can check out my work at Pixotato. That's my Instagram handle, but I also post quite a bit on Dribbble and also on Behance.
It's awesome. Highly recommend everyone check it out.
Thank you. Another thing about me is that I like to learn about learning. And what that means is I think, even after you graduate from college or you graduate from high school, that doesn't mean you have to stop learning. You can stay curious, you can stay open-minded. And it's very important for both design and for life, I think, to, have a level of humility so you can keep on learning about new things. And that approach and that mindset allows you to see every challenge as a potential opportunity to learn something new.
And then the very mindset, as you would say, right, Joanna?
Yes, hashtag go Microsoft, because Microsoft is big on growth mindset. The very last thing is something that Julie and I actually have in common. We found out that both of us care a lot about sustainability and protecting the environment. And I think that is so important. And also a spoiler alert for the app that I'll be going through later today. And the reason for this is because I think we're so lucky to be given all the resources that we have, whether it's the beautiful planet and nature, which is all around us, or other things that you don't think about, like our time, our resources, or our health. And I think the reason why we're given these things is so that we can share with one another and be kind to one another and just be more loving and generous. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And we're both in Seattle, Washington. So if we have anyone else in the chat from Seattle, we are here with you. But we're with folks around the world too. So we have a couple more people in the chat. So Silene from New Zealand, Everyone else, let us know where you're from in the chat. We'll give a little shout out as we go. So Joanna, what are we going to be doing today?
Yes, I guess before that, I have another question too, just so people in the chat can sort of get to know me, or I can share about myself. Like, what are your New Year's resolutions? For me, I want to learn something new and do something new every single day. So doing this live stream is actually my very first live stream ever. So very exciting. Yeah, people in the live chat, feel free to share more about your New Year's resolutions.
We have a couple folks saying that they love your background, by the way.
Oh,
let us know, everyone, what your New Year's resolutions are. We're a couple months into the new year, but we have a whole rest of the year to go.
I think they say it takes about 2 months to build a habit. So this is sort of like that time of year when people have either given up or created a new habit based off their January goals, which is fine. You know, it's okay to change your mind and focus on other things.
Keep learning.
Yes. And then I guess before we go into the project, I just want to go over some other things that are my interest or my passions. I really like illustration, and specifically I've been really into pixel art. So back when I was younger, I had a handheld console to play Tetris. And back then, like, I don't want to age myself, but consoles only had one game, and there was no way to change what game that was. So I only played Tetris when I was a kid, and then I really loved Tetris. I played it way too much. So when I've been making pixel art lately, I've actually wanted to just use a very limited color palette, because I think constraints in design sort of force you to think more creatively, you know, kind of push the limits based on what you're given. And so I just really wanted to stick to a certain set of colors and try to do as much as I can in terms of creating contrast and like different levels of detail. So this is something awesome on my Instagram if you want to check it out. And yeah, it's just fun to do. And another thing about me is that I like to play with 3D tools. So this was created using a tool called Magic of Voxel. All these different architectural designs and different isometric renders and even different buildings. I can show you very briefly that tool, Magic of Voxel. It's a voxel art editor, and it's also free to download. And the thing that's so great about it is, like, oftentimes 3D tools, like you think about Maya or Cinema 4D, they are so complex to get started. And it's because they're so powerful and like the amount of things they can do. But Magic of Voxel to me is like quite simple. It's easy to get started. And once you can render something, you can also tweak the effects and the different materials quite easily. So it allows you to be more expressive and more artistic from the start. And I think it's just really fun to use.
I love the contrast that you have, you know, between the pixel, almost like 2D animation, all the way to the full-fledged 3D. It's really awesome to see that breadth that you have. And then we'll be doing mobile app design today, so even more.
Yes,
which is awesome.
So if you're someone that wants to get into pixel or voxel art, I actually blog quite a bit on Medium. And I do this because it's like a way for me to remember like the different lists of things I need to do, or if I like find a good resource, I want to jot it down. Back then, because I had some good friends in my church group who helped me sort of figure out what I wanted to do, like what I could study potentially. And like I look back on it now, and I think it's just been like such a big blessing to have those friends in my life. And so if there's anyone out there that, you know, wants to get into design, or if you're still in college trying to figure out what to study, I think of blogging almost as a way to give back and also to mentor in a way that's really scalable, because the internet is like, you know, anyone can go and read my things if they want to, or if they have a question, they can like reach out if they would like to. And so like when it comes to pixel or voxel art, I made this post for people that want to get started, because everyone is a beginner at something. And then in general, I just like write so much because, again, I'm forgetful. And I also like to talk to people, but like probably more one-on-one, as that's my preference as a reserved person. So sometimes I talk to people that are doing cool things in art or code. And I also have talked to a bunch of female founders, just because I think like their stories are so interesting to hear about their life journey and how they choose to work in like the problem space that they do. And also it's, again, International Women's Day. So like maybe later on, if you have time, I'll share more about my t-shirt, which is actually a shirt from Great Software. But yeah, feel free to check out my blog on Medium. I am at Joanna, and I write a lot. I have a lot of design resources and tools and everything on there.
So if you are in the chat and you're new to UX design, go check out Joanna's Medium. She has all the resources that you need to get started.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of like OCD about organization. So I have like everything is categorized in the About page, whether it's things related to UX or 3D tools or user research, or like I make a lot of book lists because I like to read. And yeah, it's all on there.
Awesome.
Okay. And I know we're still like getting to the project slowly, but I just want to share a little bit more context about how I see design. I think being at Microsoft, I'm so lucky to be at a place where like it impacts so many people around the world. Like you say Microsoft and people like, you know, they'll think about Windows or just like think about different software that is that they use every day. And yeah, when I think about technology, it is so pervasive and so powerful and influential in society. And I think we're seeing more and more of the effects that it has on us every day, especially during like 2020 and during COVID, when a lot of people are physically isolated or like physically distant from one another. I think the power that technology can have is bringing people together, actually making something meaningful and making something valuable for people. So I just want to share this story that I heard from my coworker at Microsoft. And it was that there was a Japanese elementary school that actually recreated their graduation ceremony fully using Minecraft. And this was a story that was repeated in different high schools, different colleges, all around the world. And this one is Berkeley, they just call it Blockley, but it's UC Berkeley. And I think it's so cool whenever technology is used to empower people versus when it's being used as like a silver bullet solution. So yeah, that's how I see the role of technology. I think like designers are also there to make sure that people are getting as much value as they can out of technology.
Totally. Designers are the ones building and designing the world around us. So super important to have this foundation. Awesome.
Yes. Yeah. And then like the context for the project today is actually because I was part of a employee hackathon at Microsoft. This was a few years ago. But the hackathon at Microsoft is something that happens every year where employees can come together from all these different campuses and work on like a passion project or like an idea that they put off for so long. And I was lucky enough to be part of a group that was partnering with the nonprofit, the Ocean Cleanup. So the Ocean Cleanup, if you haven't heard of them before, they are an NGO based in the Netherlands. And they are tackling this huge problem of plastic pollution in the world's oceans. And they've been building solutions in the form of different technology to try to clean up this waste, as well as research the problem so we can understand it better, and also bring public awareness to the problem of, you know, pollution and like plastic pollution in the ocean specifically. So the problem is that like when plastic goes into the ocean, it starts disintegrating into microplastics. And these are like, you know, very tiny pieces of plastic. And at that point, it starts sinking. And then I think the majority of plastic waste is actually like at the bottom of the ocean at that point when it's so small. And that makes it really hard and really inefficient to clean up. So the way they wanted to approach this problem was actually be more proactive about it and go to these riverheads in different parts of the world where like the waste was primarily entering the ocean and try to stop it at that source. So like that's still like a huge problem, right? Like that is a global problem and it requires cooperation from so many different governments, different groups, private and public working together, as well as like the public having a knowledge, like being aware that that is happening. And so they needed our help to think of a way that we could identify the trash at the riverheads, and that way they could figure out a way like where they should focus their resources on stopping that problem at the source. Because we have limited resources, we have a limited amount of time. So having that data would really help them understand where to focus their resources. And so they were telling us that they had implemented different cameras at these different riverheads in certain locations. I think back then it was around in Malaysia and Jakarta is where they had these cameras. But then people couldn't physically go out and stand by the camera and count all the different pieces of plastic. They couldn't even look at that video stream and count it just because people don't have that energy to do that, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for years and years on end. But technology can. Like the solution is that technology and people together could count those pieces of plastic and identify the different types of waste that we're going through. And with that data, that would be something that the ocean cleanup could then use to go and do their work.
So for everyone on the chat right now, we are going over some context before we get into the design portion. So Joanna's talking about the hackathon that she was a part of at Microsoft, working with an NGO. And if you have any questions for Joanna throughout, jump on Behance to the chat and ask your questions there. We see a few questions already popping in the chat. So jump over to Behance if you are on YouTube, for example, to ask those questions. Go ahead, Johanna.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me more context. I think, I've been thinking about this project for so long, and I'm really glad that I'm doing this Adobe Live, because I think the best inspiration sometimes for creative people is like last minute panic or like a deadline. So having this really pushed me to go and think through the rest of this project. But anyways, after the hackathon, or like during the course of the hackathon, we were able to bring together people that had data science backgrounds, people that were engineers, a designer like me, and just like people from all over the company. And the output of what we made was that we got to train a machine learning model with many labeled images. And I'll share more about what that means later on. But basically, this machine learning model could be used in combination with that camera feed that was looking at these different riverheads in order to identify the different types of plastic waste and also count them. So that was really useful for the nonprofit, because that was what they couldn't do with a person. And I think before that, they actually had one person from their group actually like physically counting the different pieces of plastic. Whoa. And that is just not scalable. Like that's not something you can continue to do. So I think this hackathon project went on for a few years. And at the end of it, Microsoft volunteers and our network together were labeling over 30,000 images. And this is all data that was used to train the model to make it more effective and more accurate over time. And
awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was such a great experience. And at the end of it, the nonprofit got additional funding from Microsoft to keep doing their work. And then the data and the machine learning model could be used as like a proof of concept to continually develop the technology behind the interceptor, which is like this vessel in the background here. It's like a solar powered vessel that they put along these riverheads to identify the waste. And they have like this long sweeping thing in that can like sweep in the plastic waste, and they can actually clean it up without having people interact with the pollution, which was pretty harmful in some cases.
Totally. It's interesting. You could think about, that feedback loop, the trash that you're seeing most often. Now that you can track it and label it, then you can figure out like, okay, what is the most common piece of plastic in these riverheads and things like that. So there's a lot of potential. This is awesome.
So that brings me to the project here today. It is called Trashtag, and Trashtag is a mobile app that connects people if you want to clean up the environment. So maybe people like Julie and I, or people that were part of that hackathon at Microsoft, like we just care about cleaning up the environment. You want to do something about it with people who need data for technology to protect the environment. And you can think of these as nonprofit groups, or such as the Ocean Cleanup, which I talked about before, and then another nonprofit group that I actually got to speak to a few weeks ago. So just wanted to share a little bit more about Project BB. And I think someone from that group should be in the live chat. If not, I'll just share more about this group. They are also based in the Netherlands, and they are a nonprofit group that is building a beach cleanup robot. And it's so adorable. Like I'll show you more pictures later on. But what they built is sort of like this little car, which has 4 wheels, and they have a camera attached to it. So this beach cleaning robot has like several different purposes. One of them is to bring awareness to the problem of beach pollution, or like litter along the beach. Another one is to do data collection. So they can use the camera to like track the different types of litter that are on the beaches. And then the third one is to actually do a cleanup. So they also are using machine learning technology in parallel with that camera, so that they can identify one specific type of litter that is on the beaches, which is cigarette butts. And I think through research or through data, they found out that that is the most common type of litter that is out there polluting the beaches. And they just wanted to focus on focus very narrowly on the problem, make sure they can do something about it, and then go and expand. And I think that's like a very smart way to approach a problem. So Trashtag would be about connecting the people that are able to, go out on a weekend or go out on a walk to a beach, see that there is a need for like certain data collection. So maybe finding out pictures. I would say like the nonprofit would need more images of cigarettes butts in different locations. They're able to sort of capture these images, send them through the app to the nonprofit, so then the nonprofit can use the data to improve their technology. So it's like connecting these two groups together, whereas otherwise apart, they wouldn't be able to do the things that they want to do.
It looks like we do have Project BB on the chat.
Okay, awesome.
So if you have any questions for them too, they'll be there.
Yeah, they're great. It was a lot of fun to hear about what they're doing. Also hear that other people care about this problem and they're actually actually building something to solve it. So that was what inspired me to focus on this mobile app, that experience of working in the hackathon, and also just getting introduced to the Project BB and all the cool things that they're doing. So just wanted to segue into the technology, just like very briefly. I am not an expert in machine learning technology, so that is not my expertise at all, or like even my background. But what I've been learning so far is that this type of technology, or computer vision more specifically, needs lots and lots of high quality data in order to work accurately. So that actually needs the help of people like you and me. There are things that computers are good at doing, and there are things that people are good at doing as well. But sometimes those skills are different. And that's why we need to work collaboratively together in order to make machine learning work. And so I would explain this by saying like data in the form of images, like this, for example, is like the camera feed above a riverhead. If you sort of zoom in a little bit more, you can see like there's these little boxes around it. And these are actually bounding boxes, which are added by people to tell the computer there is a piece of plastic waste here and there, and this is like organic waste, this is inorganic waste. What the computer needs is lots and lots of these labeled examples, because over time, it's sort of like how the human eye works. You see lots and lots of examples of something, and then it becomes sort of like pattern recognition, where if you give the computer a new image that it hasn't seen before, it can make a guess as to what's in the image. So that is the same thing that is happening for Project BB with their camera. Like they want to see so many different examples of cigarette butts, and they need the images to be labeled. So then over time, they can build up that sort of pattern recognition that can help the robot operate by itself.
And Joanna, how did you get into this interest from a career standpoint? Is this something that was inspired from that hackathon at Microsoft, or was it kind of before that time too?
I think it was probably before that time too. And I think there's always been a lot of, like technology changes a lot. And then you always hear about different trends that are coming up in the world, like blockchain or IoT, or like I think machine learning and AI are one of those things too. And for me, it was just really interesting because I think I personally am a very privacy conscious person. I also think way too much. And so when I think about machine learning, I just think about, like, I think there are some natural fears in me about like, oh, our machine's going to take over all our jobs, or like what's going to happen in the future? Like, how can we prevent evil robots from taking over? And like, the more I learned about it at Microsoft, it seemed like that was actually a huge misconception on my part. It's less about like the robots or like AI as like this black box sort of operating independently, but more about how people and technology can come together to solve problems for the greater good. And I think that's how I see like my career going. It's how can I, as a designer, find ways to make sure technology serves the needs of people, and not just like serves the needs for like a very small group of people, or like just for like profit's sake. Yeah, I think that's how I navigate my career. But honestly, there wasn't really any plan. It's just, I was fortunate enough to talk to different people and just learn more about what's going on in the company and also outside. Like I like to read the tech news, I like different tech news blogs, and just figure out what's going on. Yeah.
And I'm sure throughout the stream, you'll mention different resources and things that people can check out if they're interested in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is awesome.
I am such a resource hoard. Like, I don't know, I just have a lot of bookmarks. And then when I have too many browser bookmarks, I turn those into an article for other people because I figure, maybe someone else will find some help in this. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, anyone on the chat who just jumped in, Joanna has a Medium page that you can check out. I believe it's medium.com/njoanna. She has tons of resources available on there that she's bookmarked and organized in an amazing way. So go check out those.
Yeah, so here's the roadmap for the rest of today. And we are going to be doing this stream for 2 days in a row, but on day one, which is today, we're going to be doing like an abbreviated version of research. And just to clarify, this is not user research. For me, this is more like whenever I start a new project or think about a new problem space, I like to just read up a lot of information on it, like try to immerse myself very deeply in a space and sort of get my footing before I build any solutions. And I heard this from a user researcher friend of mine. He was just saying like, solutions are a dime a dozen. And then the important thing is to focus on the crux of the problem. And I think that's so true for design. Just because we have these tools, or like even as technologists, just because we have this set of tools like that we know, or like technology that we know works this way or that way, like it's more important to understand how it will impact people and what benefits we can bring to that, and also how we can minimize harm. So just focusing more on research first, and then I'll do some basic mind mapping, do some sketching, do some wireframes, and then we'll turn those wireframes into low fidelity designs, all using Adobe XD. And then on day two, we're gonna polish off those into higher fidelity designs.
So we are doing a full super condensed design process today and tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes, and I also never talk as I'm doing it. So this is a very new experience for me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, so you should be seeing my screen right now. And I mentioned we are starting off with the research process, and just sharing more about my personal research approach is, again, just like immerse myself. I am a sponge. I just assume I don't know many things, which is true. And I try to just like read as much as I can, talk to different experts in a space. And this is not just with Trashtag. I think this is my approach to any new problem. Just talk to the experts, talk to the people that have been working in this space for a while because they know a lot. And maybe if you're working on a product that has been around for a while, you can talk to people that are interfacing with that product every single day. There's so much you can learn just by doing interviews and sort of hearing about people's journey as they're using this product, the things that are pain points, and try to really listen for their underlying needs and not bring too many of your assumptions there along the way. And then after that process, like maybe there's some level of like distilling the information down. So if there's any common themes or common pain points that are coming across with different interviews, you can like make note of those. Or I also try to make note of extremes. So if people are saying like things like, this is really, really awesome, or like, oh, this is awful and I hate doing this, that's what you need to pay attention to as like putting on your user researcher hat, just paying attention to those like highs and lows, those extremes in terms of user experience. And then the very last thing, I think this is just the role of a designer, is to reframe the problem. So maybe when you first started on like a client brief, they told you like, we're trying to fix like A, B, and C. And maybe that's not actually the case. I think with research and with your role as a designer is to understand people's needs, understand like the client's needs, and try to like bring those together based off of the constraints and the resources that you have. And yeah, that is like the superpower of designers. I think it's like reframing the problem and clarifying the problem.
Yeah, it's sometimes you don't even know if you're solving the right problem in the first place. So that's where this portion is super important, this research in the beginning. So this is awesome to see.
Yeah. And so I mentioned, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a question from Eli. So first off, they say that they're super excited for this project, love seeing this process. So we're off to a great start so far. And they had a question about your career path. So a little bit about, where you started. Did you went to design school, or did you go to design school, number one? And then what was that career path early like getting into design?
Yeah, so I mentioned I did switch majors. So I went to the University of Washington in Seattle. First off, I was studying biochemistry and I wasn't doing anything related to design at all, but I was actually doing undergraduate research. And I think that just made me more analytical and more committed to like a rigorous process, because back then it's like there is very little margin for error. You have to like pipette things at like a microliter level. Otherwise, your results will be completely off. So that was interesting, but I don't think it was for me in the long term. So I was looking for something that was more creative. And then I had some church friends that who were in the industrial design program at Microsoft, or not at Microsoft, but at UW at that time. And they just told me, like design is a career, or like design is a possibility. Why don't you go and check it out? And so I took the intro class back then. I fell in love with it. And I felt like, this is so awesome. I didn't know it was a career. I didn't know someone could still be like artistic and creative and make that their job. So it was just so awesome to find. And after, I think it was around my senior year or my junior year, I did an internship at Microsoft. But I think even a little bit before that, I was just looking for a small like side gigs I could do while I was still a student, partly because I need to make money some way and like support myself, and also just to get more experience. So I was working as the only designer for a financial software company. That was a startup. I also worked as the only designer for a really small mobile gaming startup. And yeah, those were just like, it was so hard for me back then. I don't know why I was able to do those things. Like I knew nothing about design and I probably gave them really awful mock-ups, like to be honest, but it was all a learning opportunity. And I think we are all beginners and we all have to start somewhere and like just learn by doing.
Yeah, I love what you said earlier about that like student mindset and maintaining that throughout your career. And a great way that I've seen is, to keep practicing, like you said, learn by doing. And if you've checked out the Daily Creative Challenge, that's a great place to learn by doing, and check it out. We'll be having a stream later today for anyone in the chat who wants to do that. So that's a great way to learn by doing, try out an exercise, and make those designs even better. So let's jump back in. Thank you for answering that, Joanna. Eli, hopefully that helped around your career question. So what will we be talking about next?
Oh yeah, I just, there's like the second part of that question. I think I just kind of ignored it, but I've been at Microsoft for maybe a little more than 5 years now. So I think after I graduated, I just stuck around at Microsoft. And part of that reason is because I feel like in a lot of ways, Microsoft is like a university. There are so many people, so many things to learn. And even though I didn't continue school after doing my undergrad, I feel like, like I've never missed out on that many opportunities to keep on learning. And yeah, that's what I've really enjoyed being at Microsoft. And that's why I'm still here today.
Woohoo.
Yeah, okay, jumping back into the project. So Project BB, I talked to the founder through WhatsApp like a few weeks ago, and he was telling me about how there's just so much trash and so much litter on the beaches in the Netherlands. And it was just something that people would, sometimes go out in volunteering groups to go and clean up. Or they would, like, they just felt like it was a big problem and they wanted to do something about it. And I appreciate that level of being proactive whenever you see something that's wrong with the world. Because I think there are so many things like we can feel frustrated by or like angry about, but sometimes we don't feel. And yeah, they showed me that they have a concept where you can be about that is like the idea of gamification. So that was something that I wanted to think about for Trashtag, is like, how can we make the experience more fun and more, it's like more motivating to do? Because I think, just having like a mobile app that's functional, that's okay, but we can always do a little bit better. Just make people, like allow people to enjoy the experience. I also was looking at different things online. So there's like this fact sheet from the Ocean Conservatory, which is another great nonprofit. And yeah, they just sort of confirmed the things I was hearing from the founder of Project BB, which is like cigarette butts are this, like the top piece of waste, like top piece of litter that is on the beaches. And they're also full of toxic chemicals. I think there's like more than 7,000 chemicals in a cigarette butt, and they can pollute water very quickly. And that pollution is not just like I think about it like radiation, it's like accumulating over time. So we should do something to stop it. And then more facts from the Ocean Conservatory about how like plastic is entering the human food chain. So it's not just affecting wildlife or affecting our environment, but also affecting people. Really sad stuff. And yeah, I think there's so many images of like wildlife getting tangled up in different pieces of waste or like ingesting it. And then, yeah, just like there's so much harm that is caused by people. And we don't always see that harm. And then that led me to another website, another resource I just wanted to share because it was so interesting to me. Like I didn't know any of this before I started this project and like started thinking more about it. But there's something called the hidden costs. It's like another website that's out there where it's just journalists investigating the global supply chain. And so this is the impact that is caused by our consumption. You know, as Americans, like we're very lucky to live in a place that has like for the people that are Americans, like we live in a place that is very fortunate, I think, in terms of the things we can consume and like the things that are so readily available to most of us. And we don't see a lot of the harm that is in that process along the way for like maybe like a package showing up on our doorstep or like a pair of shoes that we order online. And so sort of seeing the other side of this and all the things that are like the costs along the way was really eye-opening for me. And another thing, just like briefly giving it a shout out, is like AI for Earth at Microsoft. I got to talk to one of the people involved in this program a few weeks ago, and he was just sharing about all the great work that they're doing in terms of providing funding and resources for different environmental nonprofits around the world, actually. So it's just so cool that Microsoft's able to support these nonprofits in this way. And I think before that, like my thinking was that, like, you know, just like throw money at the problem, you know, like, you know, give nonprofits more money. They don't have a lot of funding. But what I learned is that they actually need resources in terms of technology, in terms of data, or in terms of like volunteers like you or me, just contributing in the different ways that they need. So that was something that was new to me. I just wanted to share it because it's cool. And if you want to learn more, you can go to aka.ms/AI for Earth.
I have to check that one out. I've heard about it before, but I haven't visited that website, so I'll have to see.
Yeah, I have a lot. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay. I have a lot of inspiration. Just like whenever I start on something new, I think I get very excited about the space and I just want to like learn as much as I can about it. And so I just, I either go on Pinterest or I use OneNote a lot and I just throw like different images, different facts, different people that are notable in the space and just try to learn as much as I can. So something else that stuck out to me when I was thinking about this idea of gamification from Project BB was stall catchers. So I don't know if you heard about stall catchers before, but they are actually the first citizen science game, which is supporting Alzheimer's research. And citizen scientists are basically regular people like you and me contributing to long-term research projects. And this one is actually very personal to me because my grandma passed away from Alzheimer's. So being able to support like a cause that can benefit, you know, other people that are going through this or like this terrible disease is really meaningful to me. But basically what it's about is like it's crowdsourcing results together or like crowdsourcing data together. And what that means is that you're taking like this big complex problem, which is like this disease, which has no cure. It's like not a lot of people understand what's going on with it and sort of decomposing it into smaller bits so that everyone can do their own part. And so in stall catchers, you're playing this game where you're labeling images of blood vessels in mice. And that is what the scientists need in order to understand like the blockages which are happening in people's brains, which can lead to Alzheimer's. And so I thought it was just like so cool that everyone can do something about research, like everyone can participate and everyone can add something of their own to this cause, even if you feel like you don't have a lot of power, you don't have a lot of time or resources or energy, you can do something. So,
yeah, it's like the power of collective action, everyone doing one small piece, and especially with technology, which I know we'll talk more about today, but the power of everyone coming together, doing one small thing and creating something great like this.
Yeah, that is a theme from the hackathon project that I was a part of with the ocean cleanup. That's something that I noticed with the nonprofit, like Project BB, like coming together to think about like a way to solve this problem that they saw in their community. That's what I see here with stall catchers, and like here's pictures of like everyone from young people to people with more wisdom and age, like doing something to yeah, be a part of this greater effort.
So in the context of trash, we have a question from Raphael, which is, why is counting the pieces of trash specifically important? So by counting that trash, what will we achieve?
I think data is actually really important when it comes to talking to government organizations, or like going to your local leaders and saying, we need more funding to solve this problem. So before you ask for resources for a solution, or before you can, talk to anyone about changing something, you need to understand like how severe the problem is. And that, for the ocean cleanup, for example, like that nonprofit group that is addressing plastic pollution in the world's oceans, like it's just like a question mark, I think, for like a lot of the work that they do. When they go to different places in the world, they need to go and talk to like the local leaders there. They need to talk to government bodies and convince them that it's worthwhile to solve this problem and to invest resources in the problem.
Yeah, so showing the magnitude of the problem by counting those pieces of trash, and then figuring out what that trash is in the first place too.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, and if you do count it, you can also track progress, or if there isn't progress, like the lack of progress, and that's important too.
Yeah, for every project, thinking about what that success metric is, first you have to have all the information, right, of what is the current state, so that way is your solution actually fixing that?
Yes.
So that's another benefit there.
Just more things that came to mind, because I think I have like sometimes I can have like a weird brain. So there's a Japanese game called Katamari Damacy. I might be mispronouncing it, but basically you're this little like green fellow and you're rolling around a ball of trash. And again, I was just inspired by this. It just came to mind because, collecting trash doesn't have to be so boring or like just purely functional. Like, this is a game. So a lot of people enjoy playing this for fun. And I'm just thinking, like, how can we, again, make something that could be functional, could be boring, make it more fun. And the things I notice is like, it has very bright colors, it looks optimistic, it looks friendly, like something anyone can do. So I wanted to also incorporate some of these elements into the Trashtag app. And then the movie WALL-E, if you haven't seen it, I really like 3D animation and I really like this movie. And I think for a lot of people, when they think about WALL-E, they think about like the story of how we should prioritize fixing the environment, because I think in the world of WALL-E, Earth has already been so polluted that people can't live up there any longer. So they're like floating in this huge spaceship somewhere in outer space, like waiting to when they can go back to Earth. And then there's like these cleanup robots, which are like squishing trash into little chunks and then trying to clean up the Earth very slowly. So I think we're like in the world before WALL-E. We're like hopefully still doing something to try to clean up Earth before like we have to leave it. Yeah, it's just like a really beautiful story and beautiful animation. Just, recommend it. It came to mind.
So for everyone, if you're just joining, we're going through Joanna's process when she starts a project. So we walked through her initial research that she went through, which was looking up online resources and reading articles. And now we're talking about some sources of inspiration. Yes. One of which is WALL-E, that amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, you have to check it out. And what will we be going into next?
I guess just like a little bit more.
Inspiration?
Yes, a little bit more inspiration. There's something called the Trashtag Challenge, which inspired the name of this mobile app. So I think we all have heard of viral challenges, either on YouTube or on Twitter or just like online. And some of those can be a little bit harmful. Like I think there is something around like teenagers ingesting Tide Pods or just like, different things like that, where people are following some kind of trend and just jumping on board and doing this thing together. And just, I don't know for what reason, because people need to feel connected maybe, or like people want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. But I think like social media and like there is costs to being so connected to other people, but there's also a lot of benefit. So when I heard about this challenge, like the Trashtag Challenge, it was actually a guy that went out to his local neighborhood. He saw that there was a lot of litter, a lot of trash everywhere, and he took it upon himself to actually clean it up. So after he did, he posted a picture of before and after on Facebook. And then he started this challenge, which is like a Trashtag challenge, where he was saying like, bored teens, go out, take a photo of some area that needs cleaning or maintenance, then take a photo after you've done something about it and post it. And it went viral. And I think it was just so inspiring, again, to see how like how one person can do something and then how that can lead to like a chain of effects that can bring a lot of benefit to the world. And I wish that social media would do this more often, but oftentimes it does not.
Totally. It's that collective action piece you were talking about. If this inspired, yes. 100,000 people to go do the same thing, think of just how much trash is picked up in that short amount of time. So yes. This is awesome.
Yeah. And then like probably not super related, but then again, my brain just goes to all these different experiences in my past. Like a coworker of mine shared photography from Joel Sartori, I think several years ago now. And he is a photographer at the National Geographic. And I personally love animal photography. And what he was doing is he was taking photos of different species all around the world to bring attention and awareness to conservation, especially for animal species that were endangered or like about to be endangered. And it's just so cool to see people, again, doing something with their time, with like their gift of like his being photography, and just doing this in order to bring attention to something that needs more attention. So like, I think there's always things that are competing for our attention in the world, but like to focus on what matters, like that was also really inspiring for me.
So Joanna, so when you look for inspiration, I know before you mentioned Pinterest was a big one. Are there any other online places that you go for inspiration when you start a project?
I think sometimes I go to read academic papers, and I know that's not the most interesting thing in the world, but the thing is like for a lot of these problems, you're not really going into new unexplored territory for like the first time ever. And I think there's like a lot of context that we might miss if we don't go to like the academic world and see what's there already. So I think maybe going to like a search engine and searching for academic papers related to like a certain topic, or maybe going to the news and seeing like what startups are doing in a certain space that you're looking into for the first time. Pinterest, Dribbble, I like Dribbble, Behance, like seeing how people have solved the problem before. Yeah, and like talking to people. I think that's always been the best method. Like I remember starting on my current team, and I think I read about 50 academic papers in like a very short amount of time. And I can't like really remember any of them at this point, but it was like talking to people that had worked in this area for longer than I had. Like those were the conversations that helped me the most. And also they wrote books, so I could also like read their book and then go and talk to them. And that was really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice when you have that direct connection,
Yes.
But people can always reach out. Cold emails are a thing.
Yes, I've done that too. I have plenty of experience like doing cold emails. I think over time, I just feel like, like why are people so self-conscious about reaching out to other people? Whether it's like, old friendships or like, people you never met. Like the worst they can say is no, and just like ignore you. And right. I don't know, that's not so bad. So yeah. And then the best case is that you have a really good conversation, and that's great.
And you keep learning, which is awesome.
Yeah. So be courageous and go and reach out to people.
Yeah. So we have a question from Robin in the chat related to what we're talking about, which is, have you done any research on preventing waste and trash from the source? So for example, things like large corporations. So you mentioned cigarette butts, for example. What is that interaction, with preventing waste from the source, and have you looked into that?
That is a great question, because I think it's so important to be proactive rather than reactive, even though we have to do a bit of both when it comes to solving like a problem like this. And I have done less research about it, but I have a coworker who is leading, I think, a worldwide sustainability group at Microsoft. And because Microsoft is so big and like employees and like giant corporations obviously cause a lot of harm and damage in terms of the consumption patterns that we have. So like every small shift is actually like a ripple effect for like thousands and thousands of employees all around the world. So I know he's very involved in thinking about those things and making sure like the tools we use in our cafes, or like the way our waste system works, is as efficient as it can be. And so I would like to learn more about that over time. That's my answer.
Totally. Awesome. All right. So it looks like we got some inspiration ready. So what does the next stage of your process look like?
Yeah, I think I do so much of the upfront work, because I think it's Again, really important to understand the problem space and not just go out like solutioning right from the start. And I think that's always my tendency too, is to be like really impatient. And sometimes you hear that from clients who are like, oh, we need something like next week, or like we need something ASAP. And I think that is a moment for designers to kind of push back and say like, no, like we need to slow down a little bit. Like, are you sure we're solving the right thing? Because when you start building something, you have like engineers involved, you have all these extra costs. Building something that is the wrong thing is very costly. So you're almost saving them money by doing your research upfront. Yeah, that's how I would frame it.
Totally agree. Yeah, putting time and energy into this research and mind mapping and synthesis process in the beginning will definitely help you in the long term. Yeah, and I want to see more designers do that, you know, talk about it. So I love that you're going through this in-depth process with us.
Yeah, and maybe even if you don't have time, maybe there's someone in the group that's been there longer than you have, and just sort of sitting down with them and asking for them to do like a brain dump to you as like someone joining that team. I think that's also really valuable.
Totally.
So
anyone, if you have questions in the chat for Joanna, as we're going through this process, we're about to jump into mind mapping. So if you have any questions, post them in that Behance chat and we can ask them to Joanna and get her thoughts.
Yeah, so now moving on to mind mapping, something I like to do is use OneNote and just sort of list out all the different thoughts that are in my mind after all that information that I've absorbed. I might use OneNote, or I might use a whiteboard if I'm talking with a coworker. It's just so much easier sometimes to have fewer, like less technology that gets in the way of communication. Like I think sometimes technology can actually hinder communication because you have to think about like, oh, do I need like set up a meeting with this person, or like, oh, like what forum are we going to talk through? And that's something that I miss working from home nowadays, is you can't just go to someone's desk and talk to them. Yeah, I really miss being able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we will make do. So that's why we have technology.
Luckily,
right
we have streams like this and video chat. So it's definitely tough though in the remote world.
Yeah. So I like to list out the different problems, or maybe the different themes I noticed from all the things I mentioned before. So like the problem that I heard from talking to the founder of Project BB was that there are groups like them that need labeled images, but they can't go out and collect it all themselves. They just don't have time, they don't have money. But without this labeled image, like all these different labeled images from people, they can't make their beach robot work. And that is a theme that is common for different nonprofit groups. Like they don't just need money, they need the help of volunteers. They need that like human power to make sure the work that they're doing is actually scalable. And yeah, that seemed to be a problem. And I was thinking about it in the context of Trashtag. So like, how can we connect these two groups of people together? The people that need labeled images and the people that might have the time to do like a small part in their day-to-day. And so crowdsourcing is something that breaks down a complex problem into smaller parts. So you can think of something like crowdsourcing funding for a project, or like crowdsourcing money for a cause that you want to support. Like it's all part of this larger theme of how people can come together to support this larger cause. So that was something that was on my mind, like a common theme that was coming up over and over, and like stall catchers and ocean cleanup. And yeah, that was something I wanted to focus on here for Trashtag. And I was also thinking about motivation, because I think as like designers, we're also thinking about people and how do people actually interact with technology. And yeah, you don't want to just be doing something like the same thing over and over, like putting boxes over the same, like different images all day long. That gets boring very fast, and then people are going to stop doing it. So I was thinking like, how can we make it more socially rewarding? Because people have been inside a lot. If you've been quarantined or like during COVID, people have been somewhat isolated. So maybe a good way to motivate them would be to have some kind of social reward in terms of meeting up or seeing what other people are doing. Like, how can we incorporate that social reward aspect into the app? Another thing I was thinking about is like, okay, in addition to connecting people, like we're going to be connecting people who are like-minded. And I think it's always fun. Like when I was talking to Julie for the first time, just meeting her and just hearing about our commonalities, like that was just so fun to talk about, like that we both care about sustainability, or that we both worked at Microsoft at some point, and we're both designers. Just being able to talk to people that are similar to you, like that's fun too. So that can also be a form of a reward. And then I was thinking about Oh, go ahead.
It's almost like positive reinforcement in a way, right?
Yes.
It's like bringing people together. I mean, I can just imagine in the remote world that we're in, meeting up with like-minded people would be such a valuable thing to have. So I love that that's a component of this.
Yeah, I agree. And then passivity versus knowing what to do is like, for example, I care about the environment, but maybe I'm not going out every weekend to clean up things because like I don't know that it's there. So even though I care about doing something, or like I care about a certain cause, I think knowing what to do is really important. So that's why surfacing what needs to be done was something that came to mind for this app. Like if I care about my neighborhood, like how do I know what needs to be done? We needed a way to show that with the app. And then also feeling accomplished. Like I think the idea of mastery and competence is something that's really fundamental to human motivation. So anything that you're learning for the first time, like you want to feel like over time you're making some kind of progress. You're not just like, you know, in like a hamster wheel doing the same thing all day long. So yeah, having the ability to maybe track your progress or see like how over time you're accumulating some kind of knowledge or skill. I think that's also very powerful for motivation.
And building habits, you know,
yes.
Like something I've heard often is after you complete a habit to like jump up and scream, which I've never done, but I've heard that is a really valuable thing. So being able to see that data with picking up trash, how much you've done, and that impact you have is really, really important.
Yeah. And that again can be like the reward in terms of other people seeing the good things that you're doing, or it can just be for yourself and sort of saying like, oh, you know, I picked up trash for like 7 days in a row, you know, like I feel awesome. You know, those are just things that you can like self-motivate or have other people motivate you.
Absolutely.
And then like education and awareness, like I think that was something that I didn't think about till more recently, but any change is not just like, sometimes it feels like when we look back at history, change is just like spark, like someone putting a lighter to like a bunch of kindling in that moment, and it just like sparks up all this change all at once. But I think what I've been realizing is like change happens slowly, and it takes the concerted effort of like a lot of people that care about that same cause. So yeah, if there's some way that we can bring in greater education, like bring in more awareness about the problems around sustainability, or like even like litter facts or facts about how you can clean up your neighborhood in small ways, I think things like that are what sparks change over time. So it's not just like, you know, you use this app for a week and like all the problems in the world are solved, but how can you mentor people over time so that they understand the problem and they're able to go to other people that in their network and sort of like share that information. It's just something I was thinking about.
I'd be curious with people in the chat, what would be your biggest motivation for picking up trash or taking photos of trash as it relates to this app? What would be that motivation? That could be interesting to see within here.
Yeah, and then I talked to a friend about that very question. And so just like to bounce off ideas from other people. That's also a way that I like to work. Yeah, I think he was just mentioning that any game, like the fun things about a game is that there's some variety, some challenge that's there. So like I used to game more. I do so every now and then with friends just to stay connected. And I think games need some aspect of competition too, because I have like a competitive side. So, you know, I want to be like the best at something, or like I want to be like top ranked in something. And so having that social aspect, again, like connecting people, maybe like your friend group or like people in your neighborhood, maybe adding some friendly competition, I think that might be motivating as well.
Totally. We got a Moog in the chat says my OCD would be what motivates me. And then we have C King saying seeing my progress and being able to track it as well, which is something that you talked about before. So just to validate some of those things that you have already, let us know. Anyone else, if you have any ideas, things that would motivate you, we can always add them in.
Yeah. And then like I just start writing things down, again, making lots of lists, maybe different core screens that could be there. Right now, this is not really in any form of structure or like logical sequential order. It's just whatever comes to mind. Like I think there might need to be some kind of onboarding process, you know, when you go into an app for the first time, like what are you seeing? How do you understand what this app does for you? because you have like a very short amount of time to show the user what value they're going to get out of the app that you're showing them. And there is no barrier for them to leave. So yeah, you want to make sure you're showing them like the value that they can get in a very short amount of time. And other things, like I was thinking there should be some way to surface the tasks that people can do, maybe in some kind of feed. And because we know the nonprofit group that we're keeping in mind, Project BB is looking for label images. So maybe some way that you can open your camera, take a photo of the piece of litter. Some way maybe you can put like a bounding box over it, maybe, if we want to get that complex. And then things like meetups. So like meetup.com, for example, is something that comes to mind for people coming together around a shared interest. So maybe there's some way we can incorporate that into the app. And then we talked about the motivation of seeing your own progress. So if your profile is on there, then you have some way to track like how you're doing over time.
This is awesome. How do you prioritize those screens? You might be going into this next, but you just said that you write down pretty much every screen that you can think of, and then at what point do you prioritize like which one am I going to design first?
I don't know if I have a single answer to that, but something I try to keep in mind is like, I think there's like a usability acronym called KISS. It's like keep it simple, stupid. And so it's just about trying to like reduce down all the things, like all the thoughts and all the possibilities that are out there, because like obviously you're very excited about being able to solve this problem in your own way. But I think we can always be over ambitious. And the thing we should be trying to do is try to distill that down into like, what is the core thing that I'm trying to do? And like, how can we focus on that first? And then maybe not try to solve all the problems of like beach litter in one day, but maybe focus on one type of litter, for example, like how Project BB is doing, maybe focusing on just one type. And then over time, we can expand to other spaces.
Building out that true MVP.
Yes. Yeah.
Learning from
that term.
I know.
Yeah, that is maybe such like a trigger point for designers, because just because I think like people hear the word minimum and they're like, oh, just do like, one small tiny step, but it's more like, what is like a lovable experience for the first time? What is something that the audience will still feel like is complete, and not just like, you throwing out like a half-baked version of something out there,
Totally. Yeah, there's a balance there too, like getting something out quickly versus taking the time to really validate it. I feel like there's two different ways of thinking around that, which is interesting.
Yes, there's so much tension there in that problem. That's why it's like a trigger point for me, is because like there are people that spend way too much time on something and like they never show it to their customers. And that is definitely a pitfall, like you've been inside in your room, with the same set of coworkers, just noodling over this problem for hours and weeks and months. And then like you show it to someone, they're like, this is not really what we wanted at all. Or like, this is not what we need. You're like, wait, I spent so much time on this. And then there's like some cost fallacy where you like, now you can't backtrack. You just have to like keep pushing forward. But so that's not the right thing.
Yeah, there's a lesson there, which is get feedback early on, bring in your users early on in that process. So anyone who's new to UX, that is a main thing to think about.
Yeah. So it's okay to be like embarrassed about the thing you're showing, but then making sure you're building something that is more complete over time.
Totally. Awesome. What is this next piece?
This next piece is something that I was drawing using my tablet, and because I couldn't find a good way to connect it during the stream, I just drew out what I was thinking with like my awful handwriting and just wanted to show you what's on my mind. So as I'm thinking about Trashtag, which I took the name from the social media, that viral challenge that guy did, where he cleaned up a place before and after, just like took that name. I was thinking like, what are the contexts of use? So like, where would someone be using this? Maybe who is that type of person? And then thinking about the existing problems that are in this space. And then maybe some user requirements. So that can be user in terms of the person that's using the app, which is someone that wants to help clean up the environment, or can be the user on the other side, which is like the nonprofit group that is needing that data. So the reason why I'm thinking about these things is because I want to take like this larger problem and sort of like dissect it into smaller problems that are more comprehensible by my brain. So that's just how I think about things. I like to ask lots of questions, and then I try to look at it from different angles.
And what would you call this exercise that you do? Do you have a specific term that you use? Or is it just kind of mapping? Mind
Some
mapping.
kind of mind mapping, thinking. I'm not sure.
Throwing everything down, organizing it. Totally,
yes, yeah.
Totally agree.
I wish I had a cooler name for it if I don't. Yeah.
That is okay. But this is awesome to see. It really gets into your brain.
Yes, I have a weird brain. So yes, feel free to explore. The context of use. So I think when I think about the user, sometimes I think about myself, but just because it's a passion project, like this is one of the few moments where it's okay to think about myself and like what I want to build that works for me. Like how would I make it work for me? Because so often in my job, I never get to think about that. I always have to think about someone else. And like, how are they going to use it? You know, like how are they going to get value from it? So passion projects are fun because you can design for yourself. And I know that's like not a UX thing that you should be doing, but it's a passion project thing. Yeah. So thinking about me and go ahead.
I think passion projects are awesome. Like if anyone's working on one, put it in the chat. Let us know what you're working on. It'd be interesting to see. Joanna, for anyone who's new, is talking about her passion project, which is going to be, it's called Trashtag. So we went through context of the problem, starting with a hackathon, as well as the nonprofit NGO she was working with. And now we are going through brainstorming and mind mapping, just to give context to the designs that we're going to get into.
Yeah.
Continue on.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've been learning too, from being at Microsoft or just in my career journey as a designer, is that it's so important to figure out and clarify the problem up front. Like I've spent those moments where I just jump straight into design right away. And I built those mock-ups like in a week and done those things where like the deadline is so fast. And that has always been a mistake. You know, like at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I'm delivering these specs to someone else and they're going off and building it. But how much did I understand about the problem? Like, I don't think I did my job as a designer if I didn't help them clarify what that problem was or like help them refocus what they're doing. So that's sort of why in my own design process today, I focus so much on like the upfront work, because I think once you understand the problem thoroughly, you can make the optimal solution very quickly. But you need to do all that work up front in order to get to that phase of like actually building the solution.
Which is what we're doing right now, building the foundation,
yeah, that's why like,
reframing.
Anyone is wondering why like I'm talking so long about like, oh, how am I thinking about this? Like, this is why, like just learning from experience of making lots of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, it's important to invest that time up front, go through it all. Totally agree.
So the context of use, I'm thinking about maybe myself or Julie. Maybe we go on walks on the weekend, or we go out in nature for a hike or to the beach. Like maybe most of the time I have my phone with me all the time. So yeah, that's probably where I'm taking the photo, or maybe like checking to look for these tasks that I can do. And yeah, it might even be like something that I'm doing on my break time. So I like to take lunchtime walks while I've been working from home. And so like I like to take my phone with me. So maybe like I've actually noticed this recently. I'm just walking out on the trails around where I live, and there's like trash everywhere. I'm like, you know, why can't I do something about it? So I think seeing that need and having the awareness is like the first step to solving a problem. So maybe other people are like me too, and they also want to like do something about the trash in their neighborhood or do something to help their community improve. And then I was thinking about the existing problems. You know, it's hard to motivate people. We're all like sitting around a lot all day, and like, you know, who wants to move? You know, moving is a lot of effort. And then there's also the topic of mobility. Like not everyone is able to walk around so easily like you or me. Maybe they're housebound for whatever reason. So if there's some way that those people can also be involved without moving around, that's some way to make the design more inclusive. And then there's the education and awareness piece, which I mentioned before. It's just like, it's not that people don't care, it's sometimes they don't know. So being able to teach people over time, or maybe there's like young people there, or teenagers who have a lot of energy, but maybe less knowledge about the space. Like how can we build up these young leaders over time and like mentor them or teach them over time so that they can do something about this problem. And like lastly, I also noticed like, you know, someone taking a photo of the trash is not the same as them cleaning it up, but you just have to be okay with that. Like we can't solve all the problems. Hopefully they'll also feel motivated to clean it up, but you know, sometimes trash is also dangerous. So we don't have to enforce that if we don't want to do that.
Totally.
And then the user, I see two main audiences. There's like the environmentalists, so people who care about the environment in some way. And we already mentioned some of those motivators, which might be seeing progress over time. I was also thinking about like, how do I motivate people around me? Or like, how do I encourage the people around me? Sometimes just showing gratitude, like saying thank you. That might be something that is like this warm, fuzzy feeling inside when you hear that someone else appreciates you. Maybe something like giving them history so they can track their progress of the things they've done, and helping them feel a sense of accomplishment. So how can they feel like the things they did actually mattered? I think that is so important, like for any job or any career, like to feel like the things they're doing matter. Yeah.
We have Jillian in the chat. So when we asked that question before of what would motivate you, they wrote that they would love to have a badge. So that's something that they use right now with fitness trackers. So once they achieve a certain amount of steps, they get a badge. And we also had Sarah who mentioned it'd be interesting to have a lottery. So whoever cleans up the most can win this jackpot prize. So that's another interesting one in there.
Yeah, I love those ideas. And
yeah.
Those are good things to keep in mind.
Totally.
I think that's something like, that's information that I would go and tell the nonprofit. It's like, this is what would encourage or like inspire the people that are helping you collect this data. Like, this is what would make them super happy. So I'd go and talk to the nonprofit and tell them, share this
right
information.
Now, yes, happening live. And we've got that nonprofit on the chat, I believe, too. So we're doing that right now.
Yep. Okay, I wanted to take a resource break because I have like a bunch of resources in mind that I wanted to share. One of them is that I actually wrote a post on mobile design. I think it was a while ago, but again, it's on Medium if you want to check it out. It's called the Ultimate Resource List for Mobile Design. So like the name is what it is. But basically, I think when I was getting started with mobile design, maybe a few years ago, I was just looking up a lot of different resources. So if you are also someone that's in that space, or you just want to learn more, or find some like tool that you didn't know about before, feel free to check out this post. I have like so many things on there because I am a resource hoard. So lots and lots of different examples, color tools, things around accessibility, just icons, everything is on there. And then, let's see. I think I'll show this one a little bit later on, but since we're already here, like I like to go to Mobin, which is another website which has a lot of breakdowns of different mobile app designs. And I know you can always go on your phone and like download different apps, or like even look at the apps that you use the most today and sort of work backwards to understand why you enjoy using them, or like what's good or bad about their experience. Sometimes I get a little bit lazy, so I don't want to do all that. And I just want to look at like, what are the new apps that are out there? And so I like to go on Mobin, and they have breakdowns for a lot of different apps. And you can just go and look at them. Yeah, you can see them.
Joanna showed me this app and I was blown away because I just do this, on my own, and then it aggregates it all for you. So if you haven't checked this out, mobin.design is a great resource for getting inspiration on how people solve certain problems today.
Yeah, I love that they have this filter by categories, so you can see like what space are you working in, whether it's like a financial app or like a fitness app. They have all these different things here, and they also filter it by patterns. So maybe you're working on like a discover experience, or like an empty state experience, or even by elements. So you're looking for like, oh, well, you do have to sign in. So like I'm on incognito right now, so I'm not signed in, but you can look for things like tooltips or things like just very specific controls. And I think this is an awesome, awesome resource.
Totally. It's good to stay up with those design trends, and that'll help you do it too.
Yes.
This is cool.
So another thing is I might be making a flowchart, and flowcharts are always where you can start thinking about how navigation works. So like how one page might be flowing into another, like how is your app organized? And that is a very important part of design, which is like, I think it's a quote by Eames. It's like, he was saying that design is expression of a purpose. So we know that we're trying to solve this problem in some way. So how can we meaningfully arrange these different components, or like these different pages, to solve the problem in that way? So yeah, flowcharts, we're probably going to change over time, especially the very first one you made versus like what you're actually doing in the app. But I think this also helps if you're in a team, especially like working with PMs or working with developers, to sort of help them get a sense of how you're seeing things. And I think from the engineering side, they also have their very complex flowcharts to like how technology is working in from their perspective. So like just, try to communicate as much as you can. And it's almost better to over communicate rather than to under communicate.
There's a really cool plugin. I don't know if you've checked it out before, Joanna, called Wireframe. It's actually an Adobe plugin, but they have flowcharts built out that you can just like quickly tap and it'll jump into your XD file. So yeah, I don't see it right there, but for some reason it's not popping up. But that's a great tool plugin to use to pull in those quick things.
Yeah.
Did you design those on your own? Or did you pull those in?
I made boxes, but then I was using Flowkit, I think, to make the arrows. Cool. So Flowkit is just something that I found out about more recently, but it has, like, you can just make the arrow for you. And then with Flowkit, you can also adjust, you should be able to adjust the line width if you want like thicker lines or thinner lines, or like the scale of the arrow. And I like my arrows to all look the same. So that's why they look like this. But it's, very handy tool. And I think there's lots of plugins I actually haven't explored yet. So highly encourage you guys, if you're using Adobe XD, just browse around, see all the plugins that are there today, because there is a lot of them. Yeah. And I think the ones that are probably especially useful are related to accessibility or related to usability testing. So those are two things where you're sort of like at those handoff points where you're taking your designs and handing them off to someone else to build. You want to make sure your designs are accessible for other people. Or if you're doing user testing, getting that customer feedback early on and very often is very important. So yeah, those would be the things I would explore if this were like work job to do those things.
I realized I misspoke about the plugin. I mixed wireframe and whiteboard in my brain. So it's called Whiteboard. I was looking at this and I thought of wireframe. So Whiteboard is the plugin that I meant to say before. There it is. So that's where you can quickly bring in those flowcharts. But the one you mentioned as well, Flowkit, is a great one for putting in those quick little lines to connect things.
Yeah, I love how it has sticky notes. I have it's like my desk right now. You can see like so many sticky notes because, again, bad memory, and also trying to rearrange things is like part of design. So I think being able to use sticky notes and sort of like reframe the problem. I love how here too it has like, it looks like it has a template, and I am such like a template person. Like, so my brain just loves templates. So yeah, being able to put things together in different charts. I also have something else here. I think I use paper more than anything, which probably is less environmentally conscious, but it's also like the easiest tool to just get out your early ideas. You don't have to think too much about whether like the font is right or like, are my lists aligned, which is something that designers care about. But what I have is like, I don't know if you can see, but it is a lean startup template. And it includes things like the problem, the solution, metrics, your value prop, and things around the customer, and even things like channels for how you're going to eventually reach the customer. And these are things more related to the business side of design, which I think is so underrated. It's like, after you make this thing, how do you go and reach the customer? Like, that's like a bridge that we often don't think about, but very important.
Totally. So we just had a little resource break. So now, once you do this, what is your next step in your process?
Yeah, I mean, I look at a lot of things. And so I just wanted to, again, talk about process. I will take a look at competitors, because people have likely tried to solve this problem before in some shape or form. And, don't be so arrogant to think like, oh, I'm like the first one in this space ever. Like, that's very unlikely. So I would try to take a look at competitive apps, or maybe people that are approaching this problem in similar ways. Make sure I'm talking to our stakeholders as I'm doing this to understand their needs, or if those have changed over time. And then, yeah, focus on like, what is the big idea? Like, there's all these things that we can be doing, but like, what is the core of what we're trying to do? And so I started by looking at two different apps. This first one is from the Ocean Conservatory, and I was just copy and pasting screenshots from their app. And sometimes you can even download on your phone and just use the app for some period of time and see what is working or what is not working. And what I noticed is that they also have a cleanup history. That's great. That's something we talked about in terms of being able to see my progress over time. And yeah, they also have so many different types of trash. You can see like so many different things, unfortunately, people are tossing out or just like littering in the environment. It's kind of sad. But I think this might be a bit much. Like, I don't know if like counting individual straws is something that people have the energy to do if they're just going out for like a weekend walk. So I want to focus on the top most common types of trash. That's something that I thought about. And I love that there's a thank you note. Again, it's showing like appreciation, which I think is really important. And it looks like they also have some way to share with other people. So I think sometimes being able to share positive things on social media is something that I think is important, or like I think is more valuable than just saying like, oh, you know, I ate this meal today, or like, you know, I did this random thing. So maybe being able to share what you've been doing for the environment can be a way to motivate the people around you. And I see. So
like, what do you learn most from looking at competitors? Is it figuring out what features they're using or how they're addressing the problem, or is it a way for you to figure out what not to do? Maybe what is the main thing that you look for when you look at competitors?
I think it's like all of the above, but something that came to mind too is when you're on a competitor's app site. So you're going to like the Google App Store or like the Apple App Store, you can read reviews. And I think that is like a really good hack as a way to quickly learn about the problem from a user's perspective. So I think it was Bill Gates who said like, you know, your unhappiest customers are your greatest source of learning. And I think that is so true. Like, people often don't take the time to complain or like leave a bad review. They just leave. No, there's no barrier to tell them like I'm leaving. So they just like delete your app. They like never talk to you again. And you don't learn anything from that. And that is something I think like as a product team, people might not realize. And they're like, oh, you know, no one complained, so there's like nothing wrong. You know, like, that is a little bit, you know, it's like maybe too optimistic. So I think having a deep product understanding or going to your competitors and then like reading those bad reviews, really understanding, like, are people just complaining or are they saying something that is like fundamentally wrong with the experience? So I like to again, like look at the extremes, but then if I had to focus on one of the extremes, like either positive or negative, I would focus on the negative reviews.
Totally. Yeah. So looking at competitors for everyone on the chat is really important for understanding, you know, what they are doing today and then what they're not doing well specifically is Joanna's focus. So those unhappy customers, reading those reviews and seeing how can I address that in my new app experience.
Exactly. Unhappy customers are like from other people. Unhappy customers from your competitors are like, you know, doing user research without having to do anything. So it's like my best method is like doing this.
It's a quick way to get user research done as well.
So this was a negative review. Well, first, like they start off very positive. They're like, oh, I love contributing to the good of our planet. I think, yes, I agree. We are on one planet. We have one closed ecosystem, so we should all take care of the planet. And it says very user-friendly. The thing they find annoying is per item screen is too touchy. I'm not sure what that means. So it looks like they're saying that it takes too many clicks to do something as they're moving down the list. And that's something I noticed too, is like they have so many different items that you can keep track of. So I don't know if I personally thought that was very useful or like it was worthwhile to do. And then they're saying, you know, it'd be nice to make this app a bit more social. Maybe pick some cleanup, talk between contributors, like a chat group. And yeah, I think I agree, especially during COVID or like post-COVID and this hopefully post-COVID world soon. Like, not sure how long we're going to be in quarantine, but yeah, like finding ways to make experiences more social. I think everyone wants to feel connected, or people want to feel like they're interacting with another actual human being. So having this aspect of like social reward or like connecting with other people that are like-minded is something I definitely want to incorporate.
Awesome.
And then another negative review is like, okay, app is easy to use, but should provide the option to add items in bulk. So it looks like some people are doing like huge amounts of cleanup. They're not just picking up like one piece of trash, they're doing like hundreds and hundreds of pieces. And that's something I heard from the nonprofit founder too. he was saying like sometimes people go out in volunteer groups on the weekend and just do it as a big group. So maybe that's something that, yeah, it'd be like more efficient if there's some way to add trash in bulk versus just per item. And then at the very end, well, I was saying like, you know, some things around the technology aspect, which I unfortunately don't have control over. So like this, I would pass off to my dev team and say like, make sure the app works, like make sure you're not like logging people out when they have a weak connection. Send people email summaries so they know what they're doing, like what's going on. And then this one is saying like, I need the ability to edit past cleanups. So I guess this goes to another resource I wanted to share is like, when it comes to fixing mistakes or like getting feedback, these are more like UX heuristics. And what these heuristics are more like best practices, which are not specific and not always applicable, but you know, for the most part, they are good things to keep in mind. So I wanted to point to 10 usability heuristics. This is an article from a usability group, which they do a lot of user research. And this is just something that they've published like way back long time ago. And these are more like good rules of thumb to keep in mind, but not always, you know, 100% applicable to every single situation or every single product. So I like to keep these in mind just because I think they're like good guidance, you know, maybe not always accurate, but good to keep in mind.
So or paste them up like, on your wall in front while you're designing.
Yes, yeah, like tell them to other people that are not designers, because I think there's this tendency to think like, oh, everyone can design or like everyone can contribute something, which is true. But, you know, if you're a designer, you're also, you know, more knowledgeable about certain things related to usability. And so being able to educate the people around you is something you should be doing wherever you're working or wherever you're studying. So there are things like being able to communicate the status of a system. I think there's one around like making sure the user has control, or, you know, when people make mistakes, like how do they go back? You know, is that mistake like disastrous? You know, maybe if it's disastrous, it should be harder to commit that mistake or like harder to do that action that leads to that fatal error. Consistency and standards, you know, making sure your button looks the same. So the person, when they're looking for the action, is not confused about where like the commit action is. Error prevention, again, like how do we keep people going down the path from point A to point B where they want to get to? And yeah, I think that's just like a really helpful article. It's something I refer back to quite a bit. And yeah, totally. Good resource.
It's, you know, it's these heuristics, even though they're from 20 plus years ago, they constantly evolve, right? These are almost like starting points in a way to think about, just to jumpstart that thought process and check in with your designs. So it's not, you know, set in stone necessarily, but they're great to check out and learn from.
Yeah, definitely, because every company also has their own approach to design. So maybe there are companies that feel like, you know, like the way, you know, company A approaches design is like this, or like, you know, we at Microsoft, we care a lot about inclusive design or accessibility. Like there's just certain values and certain approaches in different workplaces. So keeping those in mind too are very important, probably in terms of your career progression.
Absolutely. All right, so we just learned from the unhappy customers. Got some feedback there. What are we looking at next?
We are looking at some screenshots from Project DB. So this is their concept video that they shared with me. And this was because they are building a beach cleanup robot, which is this cute little car-like thing on 4 wheels. It's going to run on the beaches in the Netherlands and go and find litter and pick it up. So they wanted to make it a game, which again is something that resonated with me because I love games. And I think, you know, we should be making experiences that are fun for people and not just like boring things that they have to do every day. We have enough of those things. So like, why not make things that are more fun? So they have a game where you can move around using the touchscreen of your phone to find different pieces of litter. And then when you're finding the piece of litter, you can then label it. So again, having labeled images is very important for machine learning because it's with the help of many labeled images that the machine learning technology is able to recognize pieces of trash by itself. So we're trying to improve that technology over time, like improving that feedback loop. But before they're able to do that, they need the help of people. So a computer looks at this, you know, right now, probably can't tell what it is, but with the help of labeled images over time, it can. So I saw that I was using like a drop down again with like maybe 3, 4, 5, like even more categories of litter. And I thought, maybe instead of a drop down, because it's 2 clicks, we shouldn't have that. We should make it as simple as possible. So like find some way to surface the type of trash without a drop down. That's what I noticed. And then, yeah, again, I love the feedback. That's one of the heuristics, I think, is like showing feedback or showing the status of a system. So after you finish this task, like how does someone know that they're done? They have this little like cute mascot character, and then they have like a congratulations message. I think this is so fun. I want to incorporate some sense of this in my app too.
So gamification in a way,
yes.
And then positive reinforcement at the end. That's awesome. And it looks like we got the resources break, a couple of them we already checked out.
Yes, I showed you 1 and 3. And then I wanted to show you Unsplash, just because I think Unsplash is great for finding stock photography that isn't boring. Like there's so many, like those stock photography sites that are clearly staged and like, like a person sitting so awkwardly in like a set somewhere. I think Unsplash is one of the biggest stock photography sites, and it's also free. So it's just really great resource. I like it a lot. And I think there's also a plugin for it if you would like to check it out. I haven't installed it here. I think I was just saving and downloading images. And yeah, it's been a really great resource for designs, or like if you need some placeholder images, I think it's also good. Another resource is just to ask people questions. Like it's not a specific website or anything, but for me, being able to talk to this nonprofit, being able to talk to people that are experts in the space, like that has always helped me in my design process. So I just recommend reaching out, trying to find experts in your network, or even going on LinkedIn and seeing like, I need to talk to someone that is really knowledgeable in data science. Like, let me look like for that job description, like find someone there and like see maybe they know someone that I know, like reach out, talk to them, have a good conversation. I think those are really valuable ways to learn about a new space.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So we're about an hour and a half into this stream, which is awesome. This has been flying by. So for anyone, if you just joined, we've been going through the foundation, the beginning of Joanna's whole design process. So we went through initial research that she did, as well as some mood boarding inspiration places that she found. And then we went through a competitive audit, some mind mapping, and we just checked out a few resources that she recommends as well. So Joanna, what's the next stage that we're going to go into?
Again, shameless plug for Medium, because I have so many resources there. I think sometimes I get asked questions about like, oh, what tools are you using? Or like, what are you using for like icons or colors or this and that? And I have a lot of those resources already on my blog, just because otherwise I'll forget them myself. So yeah, feel free to check out, again, like it's in that main about page. I have so many different lists of tools, things I'm learning, things about the UX process, design trends, and then like even things where I try to be funny. And I think that's more like, I prefer to laugh about the problems that I encounter versus like feel sad. So that's just how I approach things. And yeah. Feel free to check it out.
You've got that Q&A with female founders. For anyone who doesn't know, it is International Women's Day today. So with Adobe, we are celebrating women this entire week on live. So keep updated and stay tuned for some amazing female women creators that we have, including Joanna. So yeah, check that out as well.
Yeah, I guess that just reminds me of my t-shirt. I know this was like, we still have a lot to do, but because it is International Women's Day, I just wanted to show off my t-shirt, which is a t-shirt from Grace Hopper conference. I got to attend a few years ago, and it is a conference for female technologists, like from everywhere. It is a huge conference for women in technology and women that are working in computing. I am a designer, so I'm not really an engineer, which I don't know if is their primary demographic, but it was just such a cool experience to be there and see all these amazing women and all the ways they're like trailblazing in the industry. Just so powerful to feel a part of that. And I just want to give like, I don't know that much about history. I wish I knew more about the history of computing, but there are different women that were like leading the way in their industry. So like Dorothy, for example, I think she was one of the first female African-American computer programmers and also managers at NASA. So she's just like doing her thing, like being there was just, I don't know, it must have been so hard to be like the first of anything. Especially back then, I think the units that she was working with were still segregated by race and by gender. So even like going into her workspace, like that's just, you know, kind of like a sad feeling to feel like you're off in a corner, like you can't go and like talk to this person because of who you are. Yeah, so she did a lot of cool things in her work, and she was really like one of the pioneers in her field. Another person is like Mary, who was a Catholic sister who was also a computer programmer and one of the first women to earn a doctorate in computer science, I think. So yeah, you know, people that are doing things for the first time, I have a lot of respect for them, just because like it must be so hard just to be like, feel like you're alone and like doing something. But these are all the people that did things before us and like paved the way so we can enjoy the things that we do now.
Totally. Reverb Mike in the chat says every day is Women's Day, which I totally agree with. Celebrate women every day. Yeah, so it's such a fun day today.
Yeah, the last two people probably can't see because I'm not aware of what the camera is looking at right now, but like Betty and Jean. Oh, is that up? Okay. Betty and Jean, they're these two women who worked on the ENIAC, which is one of the first, like they call it the first digital electronic computers. And that was back when computers were massive. Like they filled up an entire room, and basically that was the computer. There was like lots of people turning different knobs and like making it work. But like you think about how much technology has changed till this day, and we're using like, we have smartphones that fit in the palm of our hand, and they're even smaller than that, and they run like super fast, and we don't even think about it. Like we aren't very appreciative of like all the things that happened along the way to make it to where like we have the things that we do. So I guess when I think about history and I think about all these like amazing women, it just makes me feel more grateful for where I am, like for the things I have, and also want to do something to give back to future generations.
Totally. Celebrating that journey. And so it makes me really excited to be here with you today doing this, and then all of the amazing women creators that we'll see this week on live.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. I have so many resources, but I think I shared too many so far. So I think I'm going to go to a question of mine, just for those of you in the live chat. What is a quarantine hobby or like a de-stress tip that you have? Because I think, you know, 2020 and even this year has been stressful to people in so many different ways. So if you have some way to deal with stress in a healthy way, what are those ways? Feel free to let me know.
Outsource. One of mine is getting outside. You know, taking walks during the day is really, really important. So let us know in the chat what your quarantine hobbies are or ways to de-stress during the day in quarantine.
Yeah, I think the positive thing has actually been being able to feel closer to my family. Like, I think there are some worries at the start of the pandemic. It's like, oh, you know, how are my parents going to be doing? And my dad was actually going through cancer at that time. So it was just really hard to like, you know, feel like, you know, there's like double the risk for him to like always have to go to the hospital and like make sure he's okay. So totally. Yeah, I'm just like really grateful that he's better now, and yeah, to feel closer to family through the trials.
That's amazing. Yeah. So it looks like we got some sketches.
Yes, we do. Yes. So I'll be doing this probably either on paper, and then I have another resource. I just wanted to show it while I'm here. It's called UI Stencils. So it's like a series of sheets with stencils of mobile screens on them, and you can just sketch out your mobile design on there. And they have, I think they're available online, and I don't use it as often just because I think it's so pretty to just keep. It's like not exactly the point of a resource, but I use them more in college. And I think it's great to just like find the method that works for you, that relies on the least amount of technology, just because sometimes it can be like a hassle to make sure, oh, you know, like you have like access to your laptop or you have access to the internet. Just use what works for you. And so for me, that's like sometimes using paper or using like a whiteboard to quickly sketch or like talk through an idea with my coworker. And yeah, so for this app, I think I was starting to think about like, how can we make a good onboarding experience that explains to people what Trashtag is? So we need some sort of preliminary splash screen as the page is loading or as the app is loading up, maybe some onboarding screens so people know very quickly like what are the simple steps I need to do to contribute data or to label an image. Like how can we explain that very simply? Maybe some way to log in, because then you can track your progress, as we mentioned before. And then I was thinking like there could be a main feed of things that I need to do. So as I am an environmentalist and I'm walking around my neighborhood or like outside on a beach at a weekend, like what are these things that are going to take like 2 minutes out of my day to do, where I can actually take part in something bigger and contribute something to a more meaningful cause? So from this task, I knew that I wanted to add some degree of variety, some degree of challenge, and maybe some social reward aspects to make it more motivating. And yeah, from these tasks, I think it would go to the camera, because we know that the nonprofit group needed images, probably of cigarette butts. And then after you take a picture, I know this is like very scribbly, but like that's just how I think in my head is like, after you take that photo, what do you do next? So from there, you probably need some way to add requirements. So maybe the type of trash that's there, maybe the amount. We know from what we were looking at for research, I think that like the most common types of trash were cigarette butts and like these different things. So I just want to focus on what's most common. I don't want to go overboard and include like 20, like 50 different types of trash, because that's just way too much thinking for the user to do. Just want to keep it simple. And then
KISS,
I wanted,
right? That's that acronym.
Yes. Keep it simple, stupid. Or I don't remember where is the stupid, but somewhere it's there. Like, you know, people just don't want to overthink too much. And if you're overthinking on their behalf, you're not doing them any favors.
Totally.
And then celebrate. So I have like, yay, here is like, you know, celebrate the moment people did something good for the planet. They did something good for their community. Yeah, that's worthy to celebrate.
So we have a question quickly from Amog in the chat. Do you make your sketches digitally, or how did you bring this into your XD file?
I did make it digitally. So I'm using a tablet, which I just connect to my laptop, and then I use Microsoft Whiteboard, which is another tool. But then I think Julie was showing that there was a whiteboard plugin. So I think there's many different ways you can do this. You can even just draw on like a notepad somewhere using paper, and then take a photo of that and then add it into XD.
And then I know Voodoo Val posted in the chat uistencils.com. That's another resource you can use to pull from.
Yes. And I think the founder of that is actually like a fun fact. I think he's actually one of my college professors at UW. So I didn't know that. I was just using UI stencils and I'm like, wait, he made it. Like, it's so weird. But it was also cool. Yeah.
It's a small world, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, look at this.
Now we are going to go through, I saw that Adobe XD has some UI templates. So there's actually a lot of templates. I didn't realize get UI kits. So you can go here, you can go and look at wireframes and more UI kits. And that just takes you to a website where Adobe has so many different helpful kits that are there for you. So, you know, saves you time, saves you energy. Yes, everyone is happy with that. And I really like that this one was hand-drawn because I think at the start of a process, it's okay to keep things kind of loose. You know, you're still sort of noodling over this problem and how exactly it's going to look. It doesn't matter that much. Like, don't worry so much about how, like, keeping things pixel perfect. You're just trying to, you know, get down your main ideas as fast as possible. Like, talk to people, get feedback, and go from there. So from here, I have my set of sketches, and I know I want to make them like a little bit higher fidelity. So I'm going to try to do that with the pieces of the UI components that are all laid out here. And this is like an awesome toolkit. Like, I love things that are like this, just because I feel like for designers, sometimes we're doing the same thing over and over, and we're just like rearranging them. So it's like, why am I making the same like nav bar over and over? Like, why am I doing like this? Why am I repeatedly using the same elements? If there's some way that I can quickly just have the elements in place and sort of just like rearrange, like move stuff around, yeah, that's the fastest way to design. And yeah, so going from here, looking at my sketches I had here, I think I'm going to start with the splash screen. So I see that I have some kind of image, maybe like the logo for Trashtag, and then maybe some information about what it is. So I'm going to go over here and I see that there is an image here, just to like copy and paste it, go like stick it here. And then I want to align it. So here, I know there's like a set of alignment tools. You can align it to the center. Does that for you? And I'm going to hold shift and just like scale it up a little bit. I'm not sure how big it is or exactly what it is yet. I just know I want to have some placeholder there for the image or the logo. And then there's some text here. Love that. There's like a font ramp already. Going to copy and paste it, add it here. And oh, there's a plugin that I wanted to show you. It is called Toolkit. And there's quick lorem ipsum. And I think if you do, oh, is it? Option Command L.
So yeah,
okay, it just,
there you go.
It does that. You have to select the layer, but then it just replaces whatever layer you have with lorem ipsum text. And that can be very helpful. But we know it's going to be called Trashtag. So I'm just going to rename it here. Trashtag center.
So we are building out from your sketches a wireframe, right? Of
yes.
What this app is going to look like. Awesome. And then everyone, we have about 10 or so minutes left. So we went through Joanna's whole process today so far, which, as she says, is very, very important for building out that foundation. So not just jumping straight into designing the app, but actually working on that research, mind mapping, and sketching out. And then tomorrow as well, we are actually going to go into that lo-fi, hi-fi fidelity prototyping aspect of Trashtag. So stay tuned if you've enjoyed this today. I'm sure you'll enjoy tomorrow. And if you have any last minute questions for us, let us know in the chat. Again, we have a few minutes left, so we'll be able to answer them for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, the people that are here. This is a new experience for me, just talking while I'm designing. Like, I never do that. So it's been fun. I think it's interesting. Everything is a learning opportunity. So it's been great.
And I love this UI kit too.
Yeah, I think I always forget to do this. So if something is in like a layer in another layer, sometimes you want to get to that layer quickly. You can just hold Command and then it jumps into that layer. So I forget to do that and I'm just like double clicking a lot, but you don't have to be like me. You can be more efficient. Yeah.
And Raphael asks what the name of this wireframe kit is. So it's hand-drawn UI kit, and you can access that if you have an XD open. If you go to File and then UI kit, you'll be able to access all of that. So get UI kits, and then if you click more UI kits, that'll take you to a website and you can download it. So
what have these other ones, which I'm sure are great too.
Yeah.
I find a lot just by going to a search engine and just typing like Adobe XD templates or like Adobe XD UI kits. So there's like lots of templates that people have created. You can find a lot of them and just find out what works for you. So right now I'm like doing the onboarding, trying to something like clean up. I know I want to have a few screens here to explain like what the task might be here, like what exactly this app is about. So it'd probably be a few screens. So maybe if there's like a carousel of some kind, that would make sense. And I don't know if I see this is like a circular shape. So I'm just gonna like take it. Like it doesn't have to be what it is there. Just gonna put it at the bottom of the screen. And we need probably
sometimes tiny objects get difficult to grab.
Yeah. I don't know if people out there are more used to using trackpads or using a mouse, but for me, I always go back to my trackpad, and I feel like that's so bad for my hand. I wish there was like a combination of a trackpad and a mouse together. That'd be ideal for me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anyone's a product designer, industrial designer, wants to design a trackpad mouse, here's your chance.
I would buy it. So there's probably a few onboarding screens and then maybe some kind of login screen. I'm just gonna like take a button here. And then for logging in, I think it's important to allow people to do things like how they would like. And this is not thinking quite about how much things cost in terms of engineering costs, but more thinking about what the user, like what is easiest for the user. And it's probably not just logging in with their email, but if they have other social handle or like other social media presence or like logins, being able to log in through multiple methods is always easier than just constraining people to do things their way. So I'm just going to use these little buttons because I don't know if we have social things in the toolkit. And I also don't care too much about being exact at this point since we're so early. And I'm just going to try to move it so it is aligned a little bit and just say like maybe Facebook, Apple, Twitter, some alternate ways to log in. That's what I want. And the button looks a little bit too small. So I'm just going to find a different one to log in. And then I am control or command clicking to log in here, trying to align a bit. And then those need some input fields to make here. Looks like these ones work.
So we are building out the login screen with some simple icons and some form input.
So this one might be email, this one might be like password. And then maybe again, there's like some kind of imagery here. And then using this box, it's like the most generic box ever. It's like there's some kind of image here. We don't know what it will be, but it will be there eventually someday. Just moving this entire thing down so it feels a little bit more centered. Maybe this image doesn't have to be so big. And yeah, I put a skip here as I was sketching just because we don't want to force people to log in if they don't want to. Like maybe we can ask them to do it later. Like we want to remove the barriers up front. So let's see, let me add another label here to allow people to skip if they want to. And we can just ask them to log in if they want to track their progress or something. Let's skip.
Awesome. So Joanna, we're just wrapping up on time soon. So we want to cover a little bit of what we went through today, and then I want you to have the chance to talk about what we're going to do tomorrow. So everyone, today we covered the foundations of Joanna's process. So going through research, the concept of Trashtag, which is a mobile application helping a nonprofit called BB. And we then went through mind mapping and research, and now we are doing a low fidelity wireframe of this app experience. So Joanna, what will we be covering tomorrow for people to tune in?
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to continue this Trashtag mobile app, which is a crowdsourcing sustainability app. We're going to take our wireframes, polish them up a little bit to low fidelity designs, and then polish them up even more to high fidelity designs. And throughout that process, I will share resources that I found along the way that are helpful, talk more about the process, and yeah, show you the different things I'm learning about in Adobe XD.
Amazing. I've loved everything that I've learned today. I loved hearing about, how in-depth your process is and how important that is. And then also going through the different features of what this app will look like. And I also love how it's very real too. It's something that is going to benefit a nonprofit. So thank you so much. Everyone, we have a daily creative challenge happening after this stream with our lovely Howard Pinsky. We're on week 2 of daily creative challenge. So if you haven't checked that out, there's a really fun one happening. And tune in tomorrow. Like Joanna said, we'll be bringing these low fidelity designs into higher fidelity designs. I hope you've learned a lot from her today. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. Yes. We'll be celebrating some awesome women this week. So thank you everyone for the chat, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much.